Human Rights Month, we dig deeper into the topical challenge of gender-based violence, and we bring you a special discussion with Mandla Mbothwe, who is championing a campaign titled Body of Evidence, an online movement starring some of South Africa's artistic talent using musical, dance, visual, narrative, poetry and conceptual pieces. More than 40 interdisciplinary artists have thus far contributed in various capacities. An e-book will also be launched in the coming weeks. Mandla Mbothwe is in Cape Town and he joins us now via Zoom to give us a sense of what the campaign is all about and as well as the achievements and the way forward. Mr. Mbothwe, very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Thank you so much, Simpiwe, and greetings to all the listeners.
Now, Mr. Mbothwe, this movement features a series of short, powerful musical, dance, visual, narrative, poetry and conceptual pieces, all designed to sort of galvanize a new way of thinking about our humanity and, of course, our responsibility to each other, and to build a counter-movement embracing all the levels of society. Now, give us more details, if you can, on the inspiration behind launching this platform and what the end goal is.
Well, I must say that the Body of Evidence campaign/movement has decided in the mid last year during our lockdown, when the shocking stats of gender-based violence and femicide in our country was skyrocketing. It was quite shocking to learn the fact that every 3 hours a woman is being murdered in South Africa. And it was quite important that actually at that time we were not really focusing on that. We were focusing on the pandemic of coronavirus. And it was not because of it was the very first time that we were experiencing this gender-based violence in South Africa. It was a continuing factor, and it is quite consistent. Sadly, so it is a consistent factor that is taking place in our country, and there seems not to be enough attention that is paid into it. And whereas that actually at that particular moment we knew that this is another second pandemic, which our president alluded to that early this year. So it was quite important for us, together with the various kinds of artists who were already bothered by this fact. And we, together with our sponsors, we sat down, we said that we must do something in online gender-based violence, and with the artists that we know that are already embarking on in this kind of campaign as individuals, also as organized kind of structures with this. So it was quite important for us that to say that, listen, we cannot move on as a country as if nothing is happening. We cannot move on as a country while our brothers, while our sisters, our mothers, our aunts, our wives, and our neighbors are being murdered each and every 3 hours in our country. So the call was that we need to open up a platform. We need to tell these stories. We need to tell them as they are. We need to employ artists during that time of their dire need to actually engage with this work, this important work of dealing with this second pandemic in our country.
You were quoted by an online publication as having said that you want the Body of Evidence to serve South African communities and also remain a repository for their stories on an ongoing basis. And Mr. Mbothwe, it's often said an abuser is not born, but abuse is simply an individual decision, and that abuse, in whatever form, starts in the mind. So do you get a sense that these kinds of conversations are enough to change an abuser's mindset?
It is quite important that, any kind of country or any family or any community or village who does not engage in conversations, if people stop talking about certain things, then they will go to war. And if we do not really allow this, but the first step is to allow and give and afford people a platform to talk about their experiences, to talk about how this scourge of our country is affecting them, and of course to start devising various forms of strategies and tactics to deal with the problem. it first starts with the conversation. And there will never be enough conversation up until it is done and it is finished. So for me, it is quite important that the stories are being told, the society is being shown and being made to listen to these stories. So it is, so having a conversation is quite important. The challenge about our country is that we have stopped talking. We have stopped talking in the level of family. We have stopped talking as friends. We have stopped talking in schools, in churches about this issue in a very truthful and honest and transparent way. The body of evidence is saying that there is no way of putting this thing under the carpet. It is here. Here's the body of evidence. This is what is happening in our country every 3 hours. Let's stop. Let's magnify these things and let's shock people. Let's ask for our blood to run again. Let's challenge what is happening with Ubuntu in this phase of pandemic, of gender-based violence. So it was quite important for us that to allow that platform without any filter, without any limitation, to say all the artists, interdisciplinary artists, like from visual art, from music, from dance, from storytelling, from directors, filmmakers, even town planners, to say that, what is your response in this regard? And at that particular moment, when we're asking them, we're not asking them to look outside of themselves. We're asking them to look within themselves and saying that in your industry, in your society, in your village, how do you feel about this kind of violence that is taking place against our women, against our children, against our mothers, against our aunt, and against our wives, and against our daughters? What is your take? And then, I mean, that was the first phase when we launched it in mid-December. Just a couple of weeks back, on the 8th of March, you will know that it was the Women International Day. We launched the second phase, which also looked at the pragmatic kind of action of how do we do it now? From telling the story, from opening up this conversation, what are the kind of steps that people need to be taking, in their spaces, in their families, as individuals, in their villages. And in one of the things that we've opened up what we call the ebook, where we ask the community also to contribute to this body of evidence. And we've expanded by having conversations with different artists that partaking in in the first phase that we ran of the body of evidence. So what we say that also, as this movement and the body of evidence, it does not have an end stop of this camp. This campaign does not have an end stop. So it evolves, it grows, and it develops as people participate, and the conversations are developing in all platforms, including this platform that I'm having with you now, Simpiwe. Mm-hmm. We cannot undermine this conversation, how much important it is. And we can never say that it is enough. We have done enough of it up until it is totally erased.
Okay, you mentioned the ebook as well, and we understand that the artists they have contributed in various capacity in whatever shape or form. So, what kind of contributions have these artists held towards this conversation?
I think one of in the first phase, the artists were all contributing according to their creative expression. So, artists like Koleka Potoma had a poem that she wrote in regard to these issues. We have Masasa Mbangeni, we have Bongile Mansai, we have Lien van Roy, Fanny Swayisa. Some of the artists who said that, actually, I don't want to be creative about it, I just want to place a statement. And each and every of those statements and creative outputs that the artists contributed with, they have their own kind of engagement with the community. Because of it's an online thing, which is really great. It doesn't have any physical limitation to whom it can reach. And of course, in terms of the data, as we developed our campaign, we will find ways of actually screening these kinds of things so that they are not only online and digital, but also they are in a very communal spaces where these things are being screened and are being used as a stimulus to the conversation and as a stimulus of the society engaging with themselves around these issues. And the conversation was an expansion of these issues, really getting into nitty-gritty of what this thing means in relation to us as South Africans, in relation to us as African, in relation to the traditions, to cultural practices, into patriarchy, into gender roles in our society. What does it mean? Where is this problem coming from? And how can we start engaging with it from all levels of our living as a society?
I'm actually glad you touched on, the gender roles and patriarchy, which is a scourge that is pretty much within our midst here in South Africa. And it begs the question, Mr. Mbothwe, whether gender-based violence is a crisis of masculinity or is it just cross-gender? Because we've often heard stories of men being abused by their female partners as well.
Listen, Simpiwe, I think it's a cross-gender challenge, but it is dominant by masculinity, which is based on, in other instances, is based on cultural practices and traditions, based on egos. I think it's, and it will be very we will reduce the challenge that we're facing as a society if we try and tackle it in one aspect of it. There are many contributing factors to gender-based violence, and some are very individual and some are collective as a society and as a village or as a tradition, as a traditional practices, and some are religious. And so it is very important that we diversify our ways of dealing with this issue. Even in our grouping of it, we need to understand its complexities and how it is rooted in our upbringing. So hence for me, it is quite important that you can't even say that at a particular age, that's where it happens and more. You can say that, but it doesn't mean that other ages it does not happen. It is true that men at this particular moment have become actually the perpetrators, because of most women are the ones that are dying every 3 hours through this gender-based violence, not men.
Right.
And they are dying in the hands of men.
Unfortunately, time is not on our side, Mr. Mbothwe. We certainly need a much longer time slot and to tackle some of these issues, because this is an ongoing conversation that we can't afford to turn a blind eye to. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Simpiwe.
All right, that was Mandla Mbothwe. He is an academic and he's championing a campaign titled Body of Evidence, which is an online movement starring some of South Africa's artistic talent to tackle the scourge of gender-based violence. This is the Global